When I first moved into my new place in Columbus, Ohio, I thought I had the whole fresh start thing figured out. I'd sold most of my old furniture before making the move, less to drag halfway across the country, less to stress about. The plan was to rebuild slowly, piece by piece, find things that fit this house instead of forcing the old into the new. But after living among bare walls and echoing rooms for a couple of weeks, I started to feel the emptiness pressing in on me. So I did what most people my age probably do. I turned to Craigslist. Scrolling through listings had become a kind of ritual after work. Sometimes I'd find solid deals, sometimes just junk, but every now and then something would catch my eye. I'd already picked up a kitchen table from a retired teacher and a secondhand armchair from a young couple moving to Florida. No problems, no bad vibes. So I never really thought twice about using it. That's when I saw the couch. It was exactly what I'd been picturing in my head. A gray sectional, clean lines, good condition from the pictures, and posted for just $200. The seller's name was listed as Brian, and when I messaged him, he responded almost immediately. His tone over text was casual, friendly, like someone you might bump into at a coffee shop. We agreed on the price quickly. The only problem was logistics. My car's an SUV, sure, but even then I knew I could only fit one section of that couch at a time. The listing mentioned he lived in the next town over, about a 30-minute drive from me. It would have taken 2, maybe 3 trips, and the idea of wasting a whole Saturday on back-and-forth drives wasn't appealing. When I mentioned this, Brian offered a solution. "No worries, man, I got a pickup. I can drop it at your place after work if you want. Makes more sense than you making a bunch of trips." At first I hesitated. Giving a stranger my address didn't sit right with me. I liked the idea of checking the couch out first too, before committing. But he didn't push, didn't act sketchy. He framed it as if he was just being helpful. And honestly, he wasn't wrong. It did make more sense. After a bit of back and forth, I agreed. We planned for the following evening, around 5:30 p.m., right after he got off work. The next day, I spent the whole afternoon cleaning. I wanted the living room cleared out so I could visualize how the sectional would fit. By 5 o'clock, I was camped on the couch I currently had, a beat-up hand-me-down from my cousin, half watching TV, half waiting. The blinds in the front window were open just enough so I could see headlights coming down the street. At exactly 5:30, I saw them. A black pickup truck rolled slowly down the road in front of my house. My heart skipped when I noticed it. I leaned forward, expecting to see the couch tied in the bed of the truck, but nothing. The bed was empty. The truck kept rolling, past my house. No signal light, no turn. I figured maybe it was just a neighbor or some random driver, so I sat back down. But then, 3 minutes later, the same black truck came back. This time, it slowed almost to a crawl when it passed. I could feel my skin prickle as I watched the headlights sweep across my window like the driver was peering inside. I told myself I was being paranoid. Still, I shot Brian a text. "Hey, just checking if you're still on your way?" After that, no more truck. But there was no reply either. By 6 I was restless. By 6:30 I sent another text, only to get an error message back. "Number unavailable." That's when it clicked. He hadn't blocked me. The number itself was dead. At that point I wasn't angry, just annoyed. Maybe he'd sold the couch to someone else who'd offered more. Maybe he flaked out entirely. Whatever the reason, he'd wasted my evening. I shrugged it off, made some dinner, and moved on with the night. I don't remember falling asleep. One minute I was watching YouTube in bed. The next I was waking up to darkness and an uneasy feeling that something was off. And then I heard it. That sound. The long, drawn-out creak of the front door hinge. My front door was old, original to the house, and the hinges squealed every time it opened. I'd been meaning to fix it, but hadn't gotten around to it yet. That sound in the middle of the night was unmistakable. My chest tightened. I sat frozen on the bed, staring at my bedroom door. The house was silent again for a moment. Then came the faintest shuffle of footsteps across the hardwood floor downstairs. Each one echoed up through the empty rooms, subtle but clear. I felt my throat dry up. The steps stopped at the base of the staircase. Then, Jason. My name. A man's voice. Deep, flat, and expressionless. Jason. He said it again. I didn't recognize the voice. It wasn't a neighbor, wasn't a friend, wasn't anyone I'd ever heard before. He just stood there, unseen at the bottom of the stairs, repeating my name like he already knew I was awake, like he knew exactly where I was. My hands fumbled for my phone. I dialed 911 as quietly as I could, whispering to the operator that someone was inside my house. My whole body was trembling as I crawled into the closet, trying to keep the floor from creaking under me. The man kept calling my name, monotone, deliberate, and then silence. I held my breath. I couldn't hear footsteps anymore. Couldn't tell if he'd left or if he was standing right outside my bedroom door. Every second stretched into forever. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, red and blue lights flashed through the blinds. Police pounded at the front door, announcing themselves. When they searched the house, it was empty. Whoever had come in was gone. I told the officers everything. The Craigslist couch, Brian, the truck. I was sure it had to be him. I'd given him my address just that morning. The timing, the truck circling, it all lined up. But when they looked into it, the number I'd texted wasn't registered to anyone. It was a prepaid burner phone that had already been shut off. There was no trace of Brian, no proof he even existed. And even if they had found him, there was nothing solid to connect him to the break-in. The cops figured he'd picked the lock, something they said wasn't hard with the kind of old hardware my front door had. I replaced the lock the very next day, installed cameras too. Moving wasn't an option, not after I'd just signed a lease. But I haven't forgotten that night. The image of a stranger standing at the bottom of my stairs, speaking my name in that lifeless voice, it's carved into me. I don't know what he wanted. I don't know if he meant to hurt me, or if his plan had been something even worse. I only know that he was inside my house, and that he wanted me to know it. And sometimes, even now, I wonder if the only reason I'm here to tell this story is because the police showed up when they did. It was the fall of 2018, and I had just moved into a small apartment on the east side of Indianapolis, Indiana. The rent was cheap, the neighborhood wasn't great, but I told myself it was just a starter place, a stepping stone until I could afford something better. The unit itself was plain, beige carpet, white walls, the kind of lifeless box landlords repaint between tenants. So I started trying to make it feel like home. Most of my paychecks went toward bills, groceries, and my car payment. But I always set aside a little for secondhand decor, stuff to hang on the walls, shelving units, little touches to make the place less sterile. Craigslist had become my go-to. You'd be surprised how many people practically give away decent stuff when they're moving. One night after work, scrolling through listings while eating microwaved pasta, I found a post titled, "Home Decor Lot, $40, must pick up." The photos showed a huge plastic bin stuffed with picture frames, candles, wall hangings, throw pillows, exactly the kind of filler pieces I wanted. Most of it looked barely used. $40 for all of it was a steal. I messaged the seller right away. Her name on the ad was April, and she responded within minutes. She seemed friendly, even chatty. We talked about where I'd put some of the pieces, and she joked that I'd have my apartment looking like a Pinterest board in no time. She said she worked late shifts and could only meet around 6 p.m. the next evening. We agreed to meet in the parking lot of a Kroger about 10 minutes from my place. That sounded safe enough. It was public. Lots of people around, plenty of lights. I felt good about it. The next evening I left work early so I wouldn't be rushed. The air was crisp, the kind of October chill that made your breath fog a little after sundown. I parked in the Kroger lot at 5:55, pulled into a spot under a light pole, and texted April that I was there. A minute later she replied, "Hey, sorry, running behind. Any chance you could meet me at the strip mall across the street? My friend's borrowing the car and said it's easier to pull in there." I looked across the road. The strip mall was mostly abandoned. An old radio shack, a payday loan store, a laundromat. Half the storefronts were dark, signs pulled down, windows papered over. Only one or two cars sat scattered through the lot. Something in my gut didn't like it, but April's messages up to that point had been so normal, so genuine, that I convinced myself it was fine. She was probably just trying to save time. Maybe her friend didn't want to navigate the Kroger lot. So I drove across. The strip mall lot was darker than I expected. Most of the overhead lamps were dead. I parked near the laundromat, leaving my engine running, my doors locked, and shot April another text. Almost immediately, a red Toyota Highlander rolled into the lot and parked a few spaces over. Relief washed through me. It matched the description she'd given in an earlier message. But when the driver's door opened, it wasn't April who stepped out. It was a man. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a baseball cap pulled low. He raised a hand in what was probably meant to be a friendly wave. "You're here for April?" he called out. I rolled my window down halfway. "Yeah." "Are you her husband?" He shook his head. "Nah, just a friend. She got stuck at work. Asked me to drop this off." He gestured toward the back of the SUV. "I'll just pop the trunk. You can grab whatever you want. She said you already paid, right?" I hadn't paid yet. That was the first red flag. No. I was supposed to give her the cash," I said. He nodded slowly as if improvising. Right. Yeah, you can just give it to me then." He turned and opened the SUV's trunk. The inside was empty. No bin, no frames, no pillows. Nothing. My stomach dropped. "Where's the stuff?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Just stood there, one hand on the trunk, the other resting casually at his side. Something about the way he positioned himself felt wrong, like he was waiting for me to step out of the car. I hesitated. Then, pretending like I was just double-checking, I pulled out my phone. "I'll just call April real quick, make sure she wanted me to give you the money," I said. He gave a quick, tense smile. "Sure, go ahead." I dialed the number she'd been texting me from. And then I heard it. The ringtone, coming from his pocket. My blood ran cold. He saw the realization hit me, because the smile slipped from his face. He slammed the trunk shut and took a step toward my car. I didn't think. I just acted. I yanked my window up, threw the SUV into reverse and floored it. Tires screeched against the pavement as I shot backward out of the space. He lunged at the driver's side door, his hand closing around the handle, but the car jerked away before he could pull it. I didn't stop to look back. I tore out of that lot, nearly clipping the curb as I swung onto the main road. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely keep the wheel straight. Behind me in the rear view, the red Highlander pulled out too. But at the intersection, I cut across 2 lanes and ran a yellow light. He didn't follow. When I finally pulled into my apartment complex, I sat in the car for 10 minutes shaking, replaying everything in my head. I wanted to call the cops, but what was I going to tell them? That a Craigslist seller flaked? That a guy tried to scare me in a parking lot? There was no proof of a crime, nothing they could actually do. I deleted the texts, blocked the number, and swore I'd never use Craigslist again. But to this day, the detail that still chills me isn't his face or his voice. It's the fact that he knew exactly what time I'd be there, what car I drove, and that I'd be alone. And all he had to do was dangle a box of home decor in front of me. I'd just bought my first condo in St. Louis, Missouri, a small 2-bedroom on the edge of the city. Nothing fancy but mine all the same. The place needed work, loose cabinet doors, squeaky hinges, a bathroom shelf barely hanging on by a screw. My dad would have had it all fixed in a weekend, but I'd never been much of a handyman. Still, I figured it was time to learn. Instead of spending hundreds on a new tool set from Home Depot, I turned to Craigslist. I found a listing titled, "Complete Toolkit, $60, must pick up." The photos showed exactly what I needed. A sturdy red toolbox stuffed with wrenches, screwdrivers, hammers, even a drill. $60 for all of it was a no-brainer. The seller's name was Dawn, and he responded to my email within the hour. His tone was short, businesslike, but not unfriendly. He said he was moving out of town, clearing out his garage, and wanted the set gone before the weekend. When I asked about meeting somewhere halfway, he brushed it off. No time for that. If you want it, come tonight. Bring cash. The address he gave was about 40 minutes away, in a small town I'd never heard of. I almost passed, but I needed those tools, and something about the deal. It felt too good to walk away from. So I told him I'd be there. The drive out was long and unsettling. The sun had set by the time I left the city, and soon the streetlights thinned into stretches of black highway. My GPS guided me onto smaller and smaller roads, each one narrower than the last, until finally I was creeping through a neighborhood that barely qualified as one. Most of the houses looked decades old, paint peeling, porches sagging. A few were lit, but most sat in darkness, blinds drawn, yards overgrown. It was the kind of place you wouldn't notice unless you had a reason to be there. Don's address led me to a squat, single-story house with flaking blue siding. A dim yellow porch light burned above the front door. A black mailbox leaned crookedly against the post at the curb. I parked at the edge of the cracked driveway, left my engine running, and checked my phone. No new messages. I considered turning around then and there, but I told myself I was being dramatic. People sold stuff from run-down houses all the time. I got out and knocked. The door opened after a long pause. The man standing there wasn't what I'd pictured. Don looked to be in his late 50s, maybe older. His face was leathery, weathered, his hair thinning around the crown. He wore a stained gray undershirt and jeans that hung loose at the waist. He didn't smile, just gave a curt nod and stepped aside. "The tools are inside," he said. His voice was flat, rough at the edges. I hesitated, then stepped through the doorway. The smell hit me first, stale air mixed with something sour, metallic. The house was dimly lit, shadows stretching across the walls from a single lamp in the living room. On the coffee table sat the red toolbox from the pictures. Relief flickered in me. At least that part wasn't a lie. I crouched beside it, flipped the latches, and peeked inside. The tools looked real enough, though a little rustier than in the photos. Still, $60 was $60. When I glanced up to say so, Don was gone. I stood quickly, scanning the room. A hallway stretched off to the right, dark except for a faint glow at the far end. My pulse quickened. Don?" I called. No answer. A sound came instead, the groan of a floorboard in the hallway, followed by another, heavier than the first. Someone else was in the house. And then I saw him. A man stepped out of the hallway, taller than Don, broad-chested with a shaved head and a scar running down the side of his cheek. He didn't speak. He just stood there, blocking the exit. I froze. My mind scrambled for an explanation. Maybe he was family, a roommate, but every instinct in me screamed otherwise. His eyes were fixed on me, unblinking, measuring. Behind him, somewhere deeper in the house, another creak echoed, lighter this time, like a third person shifting their weight in the kitchen. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just Don. I was outnumbered. "Look, I've got the cash," I stammered, lifting my wallet from my pocket. "I'll just leave it on the table and get out of your way." Neither man moved. The taller one's jaw twitched. He took a single step closer. That was enough. I bolted. I didn't think, didn't plan. I just sprinted past the coffee table, past the couch, aiming for the back of the house. My shoulder slammed against a doorframe and I stumbled into the kitchen. There, I saw him. The third man. He was crouched near the back door, as if he'd been waiting for me to run that way. His head snapped up, and for one brief, terrifying second, our eyes locked. I spun and shoved past him, clawing at the doorknob. The door gave way, the screen slamming against the siding as I burst into the backyard. The night air was cold and sharp, and adrenaline roared in my ears. I hurtled over a broken fence and tore across the neighbor's yard, branches whipping at my face. Behind me, I heard them, shouts, heavy boots pounding against the dirt. By the time I reached the street, my lungs burned, my legs screamed, but I didn't stop. My car was 2 blocks away, parked beneath the leaning mailbox. When I rounded the corner and saw it, my stomach lurched again. Someone was standing beside it. Another man. His silhouette was tall, motionless in the glow of my headlights, as if he'd been waiting for me to return. For a split second, I considered turning back, but then the porch light behind me flicked on. They were coming. I didn't have a choice. I sprinted straight at the car. The man stepped toward me, reaching out, but I lowered my shoulder and barreled past him, fumbling for my keys. My hands shook so violently I almost dropped them, but by some miracle the fob clicked, the doors unlocked, and I threw myself inside. The engine roared to life. Hands slapped against the driver's side window, fingers curled around the handle. I jammed the gear shift into reverse and stomped the gas. The car lurched backward, nearly fishtailing into the ditch. I spun the wheel, slammed into drive, and tore down the street. In the mirror, I saw them standing in the road, 4 figures now, bathed in the red glow of my taillights. They didn't chase me. They didn't need to. They just watched me go. When I finally made it back to the city, I parked in a gas station lot and sat shaking, trying to process. My brain kept circling back to the same thought. It was a setup, it had to be. Don hadn't been selling anything. The photos were bait, the address a trap. There was no way all those men just happened to be there by accident. And the worst part? They knew my name, my number, my face. They'd seen my car, my plates. The police report I filed later that night went nowhere. Without a crime actually committed, without proof beyond my word, there was nothing they could do. But I know what I felt in that house.